I was thinking that today is a great day for a mommy video. So I'm actually gonna answer the top 10 questions for the twin mom tag. Essentially, it's just questions about what it's like being a twin mom. I can't believe I actually haven't answered these questions yet, but I'm gonna try to go through them as quickly as I can while also bringing you as much insight and value about just what I've been through and what my life is like as a twin mom. So, and if you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Carolyn and I am a mom to twin babies. So let's get to it. Okay, I've got all the little questions here on my iPad, so I'll read them off to you. Question number 1, tell us about your twins. Are they fraternal or identical, and what are their genders? All right, so my twins are named Summer and Winter. They are girls, and they just turned 1 year old, which is super exciting. We actually were told from the get-go that they were fraternal because in my ultrasound really early on, we could see that they had 2 separate placentas and sacs. So they were what they call di twins, which means they're very, very likely to be fraternal. But we actually believed that our entire pregnancy that they were fraternal, and through almost to last week, thinking that they were in fact fraternal, and we just found out that they're actually identical because everybody always told us that they look way too much alike and we should find out for sure because there is technically always a chance that they're identical, and I go into that a whole bunch more in that video. I'll link it above and below if you want to check that out, but they are actually identical, and we found that out via a DNA test because they actually have the same DNA, which is just wild. So now our whole mindset is switched, and now it feels so funny telling people that I have identical twins. Okay, question number 2. How far along were you when you found out that you were having twins? What was your reaction, and what was your husband's reaction? So I found out that I was having twins when I was 10 weeks pregnant at my first ultrasound appointment. And I actually really wanted to have my ultrasound appointment earlier in my pregnancy because I knew my husband was going to need to be traveling during the time that I was hitting 10 weeks. And the particular doctor office that I was going to specifically said that they didn't want me to come in before 10 weeks to have my first ultrasound for whatever reason. And so I decided, okay, I will go and it'll be okay. My husband was traveling at the time, but I had my mom go with me to the ultrasound. And when we saw it come up on the screen, she already kind of had a clue of what she was looking at because obviously she's had babies before. And she was like, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? You know, she was just kind of staring at it, like unsure what she was looking at. And I had no idea what I was looking at. And then the ultrasound technician starts to put the little thing over, I guess it was over my tummy, to listen to the baby's heartbeat. And she goes, here's the heartbeat. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then she goes, and here's another heartbeat. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Or is this a joke? She's like, honey, I don't joke about this kind of thing. And I mean, yeah, that makes sense. That would be a really mean joke. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was already emotional just with the first heartbeat, but I immediately, like, happy tears were just streaming down my face. It was so happy. Just thinking about it, I'm like getting emotional. Meanwhile, like literally my mom was with me and she was just staring at the ultrasound like in shock. And she was looking at me and then like back up at the ultrasound like, what did you get yourself into? So then I called my husband right when the appointment was over to tell him the news. And he was actually not in the same time zone at all. It was afternoon for me, but it was the complete middle of the night for him because he was actually on a work trip in Cameroon, Africa. So he's out there. It's like 3 a.m. for him. And we get on the phone. And I think he didn't want to like bother his roommate. He had a roommate because they were working together. And so he went into the hotel bathroom and he's on the phone with me. And I tell him, you know, our appointment went good. And he's like, yeah, tell me about it. Like, how did it go? And I said, everything is great. The baby is perfectly healthy and exactly where it should be. And the other one is too. And there was like 2 full seconds of silence. And then he's like, twins! It was the best thing ever. So he had an amazing reaction, and I could tell in his voice, he was starting to like crack up his voice and he was getting emotional. It was really beautiful. He was so happy. We were both so overjoyed, and it was really fun telling people that we were having twins. I used that same phrase every time I told somebody, and it was so funny watching their reaction when I said, oh, and the other one is too. And they're like, Wait, what? You can also learn more about that in my video about how we found out we were pregnant. I go into a whole bunch more detail about all the things that we found out and how we felt about it, and I'll link that above and below as well. Question number 3. Tell us about your twin pregnancy. I was actually really fortunate. I had a really smooth twin pregnancy overall. I mean, obviously everybody's got a few days that aren't great, but really I did have a very smooth pregnancy, and I attribute a lot of that to eating solely fruit and vegetables as my prenatal. I didn't take any specific prenatal vitamins except for eating my fruits, veggies, and berries in capsules, and I will link those below for sure. It's like, seriously, I live by it. And I'm not like a crazy holistic person that doesn't eat any type of foods. Like, I eat everything. I really do. Like, my husband's German, so, you know, half of his diet is meat, cheese, beer, and bread. But I really was trying to have a really healthy pregnancy. And so I doubled up on all my fruits and veggies, and it really did help it go really, really super smoothly. I had a smoother pregnancy, honestly, than most of my friends who were just having one baby. I did have a little bit of morning sickness 2 times. I got sick 2 times in total. And I honestly think that what I learned from those 2 times is I need to make sure I eat breakfast first thing in the morning. You should not have an empty stomach when you're pregnant with twins. And then the second time was actually I flew all the way from Austria back to the US, and I traveled. I went backpacking for 3 weeks in Europe. And that was, you know, a lot of energy and a lot of physical activity. Our backpacks were really heavy because we had 3 weeks worth of stuff packed up in our bags while we were going from place to place and visiting people out there. But I've got a couple of videos actually about that, about how my pregnancy was and also about what it was like traveling pregnant. But I did get sick at the very end of a 10-hour flight. And it was actually, I think it was kind of due to the bumpy landing, just saying that. Maybe kind of pilot's fault, I don't know. But in all, I really did, aside from that, have a really smooth pregnancy. I didn't have swelling or anything like that in my ankles. I know a lot of people do have that in like the 3rd trimester. I actually had a little bit of that after I had my twins, funny enough. And I think it had something to do with the fact that, you know, I was trying to recover all of the stuff from having my birth, and then I lost a lot of blood during my birth. I'll go into that later, but you know, I had to have a transfusion, and so because of that I was trying to drink a ton of water and just trying to retain a bunch of liquids and things. I think that that's maybe why my ankles started to swell up or something like that, but it only lasted about 2 days and it went by really quick, which is nice. And like I said, that was about 1 week after I had my babies. But throughout my entire pregnancy, it really was smooth. I had tons of energy in the 2nd trimester. That's what I would like to call like the fun phase. Like, I didn't even feel pregnant in the 2nd trimester, which is hilarious because I was bigger, or at least around the same size as most of my girlfriends who were full term with 1 baby, you know, because it's double. So at 19 weeks, I looked like I was about, you know, whatever double 19 is, like 38. Can I do math right now? Is 19 times 2 38? Struggle is real, guys. I have twins. And then my 3rd trimester, I really was completely mobile the entire time. I really strived to go for a daily walk every single day. And I think that's something that really helped me, is I just went on a little walk around my neighborhood. And even if I didn't make it around my entire neighborhood, I just did like 1 block, and you know, whatever I could to just like get out and like do stuff, because at that point I was working from home, which was super helpful. And then I actually left my job during the middle of my 3rd trimester simply because we didn't know that we were going to make it that long. And I had already trained my replacement because I was leaving from a full-time position to become a full-time stay-at-home mom. So at that time I did have a little bit of a nesting phase where I got to be home and just set up the nursery and kind of watch a lot of mommy videos just like this to learn what should I be expecting and how can I be the best mom that I can. I mean, there's no perfect way to prepare for twins, honestly. It's just, you kind of dive in and you just got to go in with love. But when it came down to my 3rd trimester and how I was feeling, like I said, I really was pretty good. I made it full term, and I just was so thankful that I had all the energy that I did, and that I didn't get put on bed rest, because I know a lot of moms do get put on bed rest. I think that it helped because I'm really tall. I think that helped have a little bit more space in there for both babies. We also did some traveling during my second trimester, but not my third trimester. So we did traveling during my first and second trimester. Like I said, we did the 3 weeks backpacking in Europe during my first trimester, and then second trimester, my husband and I did a baby moon cruise, and that was really fun. But I actually would say, if you're ever gonna do a cruise during your pregnancy, make sure it's not while you might have morning sickness. Like, make sure it's later after that phase, because there's no way I could have made it through there if I had any queasiness, because there was one day that was really rough, and everybody that was on the boat was looking at me with my bump, and they were like, oh goodness, like, I hope you're okay. And I'm like, oh, I'm okay. You know, I'm actually doing just as well as everybody else. Like, it doesn't feel great to have the boat rocking, but at least I was not experiencing any sickness at that point. So I was just trying to like chill out, you know. Like I said, it was the second semester fun phase. Okay, next question. How many weeks were you when you delivered, and is there a picture? Yes, so like I said, I made it full term, and so we actually had to do a planned birth because they didn't come on their own. I delivered at 38 weeks plus 1 day, and they typically consider actually 37 weeks to be full term, so I made it way past that. And at 38 weeks with twins, that's usually when they say, okay, you know, you're getting actually to the point where it's more risky to keep them in there longer because of the space restraint, and twin pregnancy is technically a higher risk pregnancy, and so it's just safer for the babies to actually have them be born right around that 38-week mark. So we were right on the dot, and that was so cool. And regarding the picture, I definitely have a few pictures that I can show you leading up to my final weeks of my pregnancy. And I don't know if the angle is great because I actually look bigger in my 34-week picture than I do in my 38-week picture, but believe me, I was huge. So anyways, here are these pictures. You can check it out for pretty much, like I said, this is like the final month of my pregnancy, and I was huge. I really was huge, huge, huge. But I'm just so glad the girls were perfectly healthy and I made it through. And that's the one other thing I would say is third trimester, the only other part that's kind of rough is like sleeping at night because you're just uncomfortable. You're just big. I had to pee like every hour during the middle of the night because, you know, it's like you have no room for your bladder in there. You got 2 babies taking up all that space. So, and a little bit of heartburn too, because anything that you eat before going to bed is like, it just, like I said, there's not space for like digestion and all of those things. So I ate really, really light dinners, and I'd say breakfast and lunch were like my full meals. Okay, now question number 5 says, tell us about your birth. Was it vaginal or C-section? And what were their weights and how many minutes apart were they? So I'm gonna give you guys the short version of this because I actually do have an entire video on my birth story that I will link below as well. And so to start with, was it C-section or vaginal? I really, really wanted to have a vaginal birth with them because I know so much about how healthy it is and all of that. But when it came down to outweighing the risks of if we should have a C-section or a vaginal birth, it really was better that we chose to do a C-section. And we did. We ended up having a C-section, and I'm so thankful that we did because the baby's positioning was really funny. So baby A is what they classify as the baby that's going to come out first. So she was head down, which was Winter. She had her head down in the normal position that a baby should be born in. So she was actually set to have a vaginal birth. But my second baby, Summer, she was all the way up with her head by my ribs the entire pregnancy. Like, they were literally like yin and yang for the entire time. Her feet were right next to Winter's head, basically right, you know, again, the birth canal area. And the major concern was that she might try to come out feet first. If we had the first baby vaginally, then the second one might not even have time to be turned. And if she would try to come out feet first, that is a huge no-no for the safety of the baby and for me. And so bottom line, the risks outweighed the positives in that case scenario, because the only other option is that we could have tried to have the baby A come out and then try to turn baby B. But she, again, like, we were just so concerned that her feet were going to try to come out first. And I do know doctors who are okay with doing breech births. In fact, I consulted several doctors about their opinion on what they think I should do. And one doctor said, I love breech births. I will totally deliver your baby butt first, no problem. And I was like, not sure how I feel about that. That's cool. There's also a good chance that you might not be on duty when I go into labor. So it's hard to put that into your birth plan if you don't know 100% that you're going to have that doctor. If you're working with a group of doctors like I was, anybody could be on staff at the time that you do go into labor. And I consulted a couple of other doctors who said the complete opposite. And this is the same group of doctors who all work together. And the other two doctors that I talked to said, I absolutely would have a planned C-section, no questions asked, because it's too risky. You first of all can't control if the baby is going to come out on her own after the first baby comes out, and there could be complications with her feet and her breathing if her head were to still be in there. I mean, there's so many issues with that. Again, also complications with trying to turn the baby, if there even is time to turn the baby. One, it's super painful for the mother and it's super stressful for the baby. And three, we don't actually know the location of her umbilical cord, and there's a chance that in the turning process that could get totally wrapped around her neck. I mean, there's so many scary things that could happen with that. And I'm not trying to freak anybody out if you're in this position, but it really came down to trying to have the safest possible birth for both babies. And then basically the last thing that sealed the deal for our decision to have a C-section birth is I spoke to a twin mom who said that she went for it anyways when her babies were in the same positions, and she had baby A come out first, and she said baby B did not want to turn, so they ended up going into an emergency C-section, which is also extremely stressful, and she ended up having one baby vaginally and the other baby C-section. And I was like, I am not about to open two doors, one only. That was like what sealed the deal. Is the only way I knew for sure that I wasn't going to have two babies two separate ways was to have a planned C-section. And so that's what we did. And again, I've got a whole longer story. I know it's hard to believe this is a short version, but I've got a longer story about this with a lot more details about all of that in my birth story video. But they did come out super healthy. They were 1 minute apart. So moral of the story is I'm really glad we did choose a C-section, because not only was it planned and it was stress-free, it was like I woke up today and I was like, I'm having my babies today. It's kind of nice to have that plan. But going in, we actually had the babies 1 minute apart, and usually they don't like to deliver them that closely. They actually wanted to have a delayed cord clamp for the first baby and wait a full 2 minutes to have the second baby come out, but her feet literally like slid out my incision. That's what the doctor said. He said, I have honestly, in his like 20 years of doing what he does, he said, I've never actually seen twins come out that close to one another. She was ready to go. So again, I'm so glad that we chose the C-section, because she would have tried to come out feet first for sure. So that's how they were born, and their weights were 6 pounds 9 ounces and 6 pounds 7 ounces. So they were extremely close, and their heights were also like 19 and 20. They were really tall babies. They were big babies, full-size babies. Like I said, I was huge. So that was really, really a blessing that they were super healthy. And I even got to hold them up here on my chest while they finished stitching up my incision. The only thing that went wrong during my birth is that I had to get the spinal injection twice. It didn't work the first time, which was lovely. Luckily, we found out real quick that it didn't work, so they were able to give me the second one. And then I did lose a lot of blood, so I had to have a transfusion, but that healed up real quick, and I'm really happy about how it went. Okay, question number 6. Bottle or breast, formula or breast milk? Did you feed one or both at a time? So as far as this goes, my goal, again, with being super healthy minded, is I wanted to breastfeed them as long as I possibly could. So I did breastfeed both of them at the same time. I also breastfed one at a time. I kind of switched off. It just kind of depended on the day and how I was feeling, how they were acting. If they were really calm, it was easy to do like football style and do both. In fact, I also did different positions here and here where, you know, I did all kinds of positions trying to feed them both at the same time, just because I'm super efficient and trying to do that all at once, but it's not easy. And it also came down to not ending up having enough breast milk. I had a lot of breast milk. In fact, if I were only having one baby, I would have had a significant oversupply, because we ended up freezing a little bit of breast milk from the get-go, but it didn't last long because they started to need more breast milk, and it got to the point where what their needs were just simply took over what I was giving them. So we did end up supplementing that breast milk, but luckily I actually had a really amazing friend who was going through her breastfeeding journey with one baby, and she had a super oversupply. So she actually donated a ton of her own milk to us, and I am so thankful. And we were just so blessed to have her donating her breast milk to us, because if you try to buy breast milk, it is also extremely expensive. And I know formula is also an option, and we ended up doing that once we ran out of the supply that she gave us. But the formula that we used, we ended up starting to use that around, I'd say, 3 months. So they were fully on breast milk all the way until 3 months. And then 4 to 5 months is when they were just doing my milk, but with a supplement of formula. And it got to the point where they were actually sleeping through the night, and I still had to get up in the middle of the night by myself to pump breast milk for them. And that's how I seriously, every single time that I would breastfeed them, I would pump immediately after to just try to get every single drop for them. And it got to the point where they actually didn't want it anymore because we were supplementing with formula, and they were also having my pumped milk from the bottle. They got really used to the bottle, and I think that they started to prefer the bottle over the breast. And there were times where I tried to get them to take the breast that they just did not want to, and they preferred the bottle. And we finally got to the point where my milk was actually starting to dry up on its own, simply because they weren't doing it enough with me. They only were wanting the bottle. And so I actually was solely pumping from the month 4 to 5. And by the time I reached 5 months, I was not getting hardly any out anymore. And I'm sad that it only lasted 5 months, but you know what? At that time I was like, it's time to call it. There's no point in pumping and not getting anything out at this point. So we called it, and they have been on formula since then, all the way up to 1 year. But we did introduce solids pretty early on. Around 4 months, they had the first little, rice cereal, things like that. And then 6 months, we introduced pretty much like a bunch of foods, anything that they can eat at 6 months, really, like all the purees. And then 8 and 9 months is when they started eating solids. And I'd say, at this point, they're 1 year old and they're eating literally everything as long as it's small enough for them to chew. So that is really great. And I'm honestly really glad that my breast milk lasted as long as it did. I know a lot of twin moms who have less time, and if they do, then that's totally fine. I know some people who don't even bother because they're like, I don't even know if it's going to work out. And I'd say, like, I'm really glad that I did, and I'm really glad that I had that bonding experience with them. It was a lot of work, but I'm just glad that I could do that and do it for as long as I could. Okay, question number 7 is, are they on the same schedule or separate? We've always had them on the same schedule since the get-go, and they actually started sleeping through the night really early on, which was such a blessing. 11 weeks old is how old they were when they started sleeping between 8 and 10 hours every single night. And even before that, they were pretty much always on the same schedule. And even if they weren't, we would wake up the other. So let's say one baby woke up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., the next one is bound to wake up at 4 a.m., right? So every single time we would get up, my husband and I would both do it as a team effort. I mean, there's 2 babies, so we would each take a baby, and either I would breastfeed and he would get the bottles ready and stuff for me to pump afterwards. He would put them back to sleep while I pump, or if they were being fussy and they didn't want to take the breast, then I would just go straight to pumping, and he would get up and bottle feed both babies. We had quite a good system going. But the pros of having them on the same schedule is that they didn't wake up simultaneously. It would be terrible for us to have one waking up and then go back to sleep, and then the other wakes up and go back to sleep. I mean, we would never get any sleep if we did it that way. So I definitely recommend, if you're a twin mom, having them on the same schedule. That saved our lives. And furthermore, I mean, it helped them, I think, to also be comfortable with being on the same schedule, moving on down to the time when they were sleeping all the way through the night, and to the time where they started eating more solids and napping a little bit better. They were never great nappers early on. They were always good sleepers at night. And I was like, well, hey, I'll take what I can get. I'm not going to argue with that. But they really did started having a good napping schedule. Oh gosh, I don't even know how old they were. Maybe closer to 5 or 6 months. Honestly, it took a long time for us to get used to having a good napping schedule. And part of it was because I always was just trying to hold them until they fell asleep. I didn't know that I could just put them down and they would fall asleep. Anyway, so since then we've learned a few things and now they've several months now, they've been on a really great napping schedule. Like every single day they nap the exact same times, and we're starting to get in that transition period of going from 2 naps to 1 nap. So it kind of varies based on the day lately. If we decide to let them stay up a little bit longer in the morning and then have 1 nap in the middle of the day, if they have a lot of energy, versus if they sound like they're just ready for their morning nap, then we go ahead and go down for our morning as scheduled and then get them up, and then their afternoon as scheduled as well. And it's so nice having those scheduled times, knowing that they're for sure going to be napping both at the same time, because I can get everything done during that time. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now. My babies are in their morning nap right now, so I am able to record my video because this is like my go time, my productivity time, my time to clean the house and get everything done that I know I have time for every day. It's like my time. Question number 8. What do you do when both babies are crying? Well, it really depends on the situation, on why they're crying, but bottom line is I try to help out both at the same time as much as I can. If I can't, then I help out one baby at a time. If my husband is around, then he'll help as well. But I try to do a lot of engaging things with them. So if I know that they're crying for a reason that's not like they need food or a diaper change or whatever it is, if they're tired, usually we know. I mean, it's really easy to read your kids once you get to know them. And we were able to get to know them really early on. And we measured everything meticulously. I used the Hatch app, I'll link it below, to track all of their feedings, their sleep time, their diaper changes. I mean, because we just wanted to make sure that they were on the same schedule. And we also wanted to make sure that we didn't have like different amounts. Like we wanted to make sure that they were both eating the same amount, and we were able to make sure that they were both eating enough and things like that. So that really helped us to keep an eye on their growth together. But with that said, it also helped because we knew that they'd had enough food. We knew that we just changed their diapers, or we were able to check and figure out what they need. We knew if they didn't sleep well enough the night before, that maybe that's why they're a little more fussy today, is because they need more sleep. But the fun things that I try to do with them are just like really engage. And they have a thing for mirrors. I think most babies seem to love the mirror. So if they're like both fussy and there's nothing that's stopping it, then my like final go-to is to go in front of a mirror and they just like stare at themselves and they're like, I swear, it's like instant happiness. It's the funniest thing. So that's like my secret weapon, is putting them in front of a mirror, because that instantly makes them stop crying and makes them feel happy for whatever reason. But yeah, I think, just doing what you can and having grace with yourself when they're both crying at the same time is kind of just like one of those things where sometimes, there's not a lot that you can do sometimes, and you just gotta let it happen. But it's like, you just gotta breathe if you're in that situation where you have 2 crying babies, because it is a lot, but you just have to like breathe and know that it's okay. And as long as you know that they're safe and that like you've done all that you can, it's okay. Don't be too hard on yourself if that's the case. Question number 9. What are your reactions to cliche questions? Okay, so I mean, we do get a lot of cliche questions, but I feel like it's just because people don't see twins very often. And so I have to also like kind of laugh and have grace, for the people that are like making some comments, because sometimes they come off weird, and sometimes people say things that you're just kind of like, why would you ask a stranger those questions? Or why would you say that out loud? But it's okay. And the things that people do say a lot that I think are totally fine and justified, that I have like good responses that are kind of like immediate responses now, are people usually say, oh, well, you got your hands full. And I always say, yep, full of love. Because that's definitely one that I get the most. Next question that I get the most is people ask me, are they identical or fraternal? And I used to always say they're fraternal, and everybody would just immediately respond and be like, really? They look so much alike. And then I'd have to explain like, yeah, I know, but yeah, they look a lot alike, but they're actually fraternal, and they're like, it just is a sister thing, and people would also ask, are they girls or boys? And I'm like, they're dressed in pink, man. The whole stroller is pink. Our entire blanket that we put over them and hats and everything, they're dressed up entirely in pink. Like, how could you ask if they're boys? Like, seriously? But it's just one of those things that like people don't look that closely, and they just see that there are 2 babies and they're just like, oh, cute, boys or girls. So I just get used to saying, yeah, they're both girls. And it's fine. I'm totally fine with that. But I will say that the more often that people ask, the more often I seem to dress them in pink. I mean, I'm not opposed to dressing them in blue and all the different, colors of the rainbow, but I will say it probably influenced my choices in their apparel a little bit more, hearing people say, are they boys? And I'm like, no, they're girls. I'm going to dress them up in more pink next time. But yeah, as far as the identical fraternal thing, now it's a little bit different because just as I said, as of last week, we found out that they were identical. And so now when people ask us, are they identical or fraternal? I can just say identical. And then they're like, nice. And I'm like, that was easy. Because people look at them and they're like, yeah, they look identical. There's only a few people who have told me that they think that they don't look identical. And I'm like, really? Obviously not. They don't have to be the exact same. They do have some different features. And that's how we can tell them apart, really obviously. Like to me, they look totally different, but I see them every day. And other people who don't see them every day do think that they look identical, like completely. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. And then like the only questions that I think like are kind of things that people shouldn't say out loud are like asking people, like were they spontaneous or were they something that like you did, what is it called? Oh, like IVF or something like it. So for us, they were spontaneous. It was my very first pregnancy and it was almost our first try. Like it was within like 2 months of trying to get pregnant. We got pregnant. It was with twins and that was just like amazing. It's a miracle, to be honest. But there are a lot of people who have twins who went through a process to help them with conceiving. And I think that would be a question that could be potentially really upsetting if it's something that is, why does it matter, right? Like, why does a stranger need to ask those questions? If you just see twins at the grocery store and somebody were to ask that, like, that could be potentially really upsetting if somebody did have fertility issues and went through a full process of that. So, I always kind of think it's interesting, like I said, that people ask certain questions or people ask really personal questions like, oh, did you have a C-section or vaginal? And I'm like, I had a C-section, like whatever. Like I've got a lot of reasons for that and I'm happy to tell anybody the reasons for that if they have like a good reason for asking. But again, it's just one of those like funny questions that you're like, I don't know you. Why are you asking that? Like random people who see you on the street, right? If you guys ever have questions for me about my twins, I'm happy to answer. I really am. That's why I'm answering these questions on this video. But it's different because I feel like the people who follow me are, somebody you have similar interests to me, and maybe you're a mom too, or you're thinking about becoming a mom, or you have twins, or twins, and it's just something that's in your life. And so I get that. That's different than people who are just randomly on the street or see us at the grocery store and ask us like really personal questions, or like people who are just like, oh, that's so cute that you have twins, like, can I look at them? And people try to get close. And I would totally be okay with that, except for because, like COVID and stuff, I always am like, please keep a distance, but you can totally look at them from a distance, all the things that happen. I think the biggest thing when it comes to those cliche comments and questions is just to like have grace and know that these people don't see twins on a regular basis. So it's not something that they're used to saying, and they don't know necessarily that it might be upsetting if they're asking certain questions. They're just curious, and I get that too. So I just have grace and I just tell them my story, and that's all I can do. And that does lead me right into my question number 10, which is the last question, which just simply says, what is your advice for twin moms or new twin moms? And my number one advice is just to have grace with yourself and remember to laugh. I think that is what got us through all of the craziness at the beginning, like all the crazy long nights and all the sleepless days. I mean, it's kind of a blur, to be honest, but take as many pictures as you can and just love on your babies, especially when they're in the phase where like they just want to sleep on you. Honestly, I miss that so much. Like I said, my babies are 1 year old, and it feels crazy even saying that they're 1 year old because that year just flew by. And I know everybody told us before we had babies, like, oh, it goes so fast, but it really does. It goes too fast, guys. It's too fast. I want them to be like little again. They're already so big and they're so beautiful and cute and interactive. And I love that. I love that all we can play games and like kind of talk to each other. And it's so cool. And every single phase I think offers really cool things that you can do together and bond and grow together. And I look so much forward to them growing and continuing to become the little ladies that they're becoming. But I will say, like, enjoy every little bit of those first early days, because it does go quick and they will quickly get to the point where they don't sit still and they don't want to just like sleep on you. There is never ever a time where I think you can possibly hold your baby too much. I'd say hold your baby or babies as much as you possibly can, because it's just the most beautiful experience to get to be super close and just having that bond really early on. And you know, I try to do it now as they're getting bigger. Like every once in a while they'll like be tired and they'll want to like snuggle with me, and I'm like, oh, I never want this to end. You know, I mean, it's really easy to be like holding a baby and thinking about like the hundreds of things that you know you need to do. I need to go do the laundry, I need to go do the dishes, I need to go vacuum, you know, all the things. I need to run to the grocery store. But don't do that. Just enjoy it. And like I said, laugh, have grace, and know that it's all good. And also that twins are really special. Like, I feel so special, you guys, and blessed and lucky to have twins, because it's also a complete like thing that most people don't get the chance to go through. And I know so many people who have said different things about twins, like, I don't know how you do it, versus all the way to people who are like, oh, I wish I had twins. So you get comments from people that are all over the board, but bottom line, like, I think it really is a major blessing and a miracle, to be honest, that we're able and capable to have two babies at once. So yeah, that's my advice, and I guess I will just leave it at that. And I just want to say thank you for listening into my twin mom tag questions. And if you do have any more questions about what it's like being a twin mom, I'm happy to answer. Let me know what other videos you'd like to see in the future. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll try to get that up soon. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe and like my video, and I will see you next time. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Bye.